Hey everybody, and welcome to our fourth and final week of Open Driveways. If you've been with us this long, first of all, thank you. Thank you for continuing to watch these and work at the things we talk about. Hopefully you've been able to see some improvement and can carry that with you into the next basketball season. So let's recap. We've talked about our stationary ball handling drills. We've started moving with some of our ball handling drills and new moves. Then last week we were able to dive into passing and make sure that we can get that ball from point A to point B without having to dribble it there. So that means today we're going to start talking about putting this thing in the bucket. Now, most people would consider this to be the most fun part of basketball. It's hard to blame them, but I have to say I think it's all kind of fun, but we'll just leave that alone for now. Today, we're actually going to be joined by two special guests, two guest coaches that are going to help us with our fundamentals of shooting. First, in this video, we're going to be joined by Coach Mark Holt from Bar Eve High School in Montgomery, Indiana. Coach Holt has a number of years of experience coaching in the Bar Eve basketball program and has had a lot of success. He's going to really help us out with teaching us, where our elbow needs to be, how our feet should be positioned, what our release should look like on these shots. He's going to help us with the fundamentals of our shot. Then in our second video, so this is going to be two parts to this week. In our second video, Coach Evan Rogers is going to walk through some drills that you can do at home to really help yourself become a better shooter. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to turn it over to Coach Holt right now and let him walk us through the fundamentals of shooting.
This is Coach Holt, coming to you today from Dusty Kavanaugh Court at Bar Eve High School. We're going to talk about some shooting techniques, fundamentals that we'd like you to practice. If you're going to take hundreds or even thousands of shots, we don't want you to practice bad technique and develop bad habits that are hard to break. Instead, we want you to see good technique that you can practice every day. That way you build good habits and your hundreds and thousands of shots ingrain good technique, good form that will be habit forming and make you a better shooter here on out. We're talking about hand placement on the basketball, and I'm using a WNBA ball. I think it's a good thing to practice with. If you have a ball with different color panels, be able to see your rotation better, but it's certainly not necessary. But on every basketball, regardless of WNBA, NBA, whatever you have, there's going to be a valve stem. And when we first talk shooting, we use that as our reference point. When you find the valve stem on the basketball, we'd like you to place your index finger right on the valve stem and then bring it down into the seam. And basketballs have seams for a reason. They're a good place to put your finger and gives you better control of the basketball. So again, I'm going to find my index finger on the valve stem. I'm going to come right down into the seam. And I want my index finger, I'm going to use some math here, to be perpendicular to the seam. And by that I mean it kind of makes a right angle. You say, well, why is that important? Well, if your index finger is at an angle, look what happens to your elbow. Your elbow goes out and your shot goes off. As long as you keep your index finger perpendicular to the seam, that keeps your elbow in, makes your shot straighter and more accurate. So again, valve stem with the index finger into the channel or the seam, index finger perpendicular to the seam. Now, next we're going to load the basketball. Now you see all kinds of people shoot different ways. We see over the head, out to the side, in front of your nose. We teach right index finger through the right eye. So I'm going to like my right index finger to go right through my right eye. Okay? Now I'm going to have Terry come around to the front here a little bit, my cameraman, camerawoman, and she'll give you a little bit of idea how the ball should sit in your hand. You don't want to be Shaquille O'Neal and squeeze your fingers like that where there's all this space between your ball and the palm. You want that ball to sit right in your palm. Right in your palm. Okay? I'll have Terry come back around here again. And there's a platform there. And again, we're talking about angles here. There's my forearm and my bicep tricep area here. Again, that makes a nice, good angle there. But in the load position, that ball is going to go right through my right eye. Okay? And I'm going to pause right there, and we'll pick it up again here in a moment. And we've talked about, why we practice good habits. In our first clip, The second clip talked about your right hand on the ball if you're a right-handed shooter. Now we're going to talk a little bit about your left hand. Again, once the ball is in proper load position, index finger straight in a seam, elbow, tricep, good right angle there, right index finger through your right eye. What does the left hand do? Well, unfortunately, for too many shooters, the left hand does too much. And we see a lot of people that thumb that ball up there, left thumb. That's something you want to get rid of. The only hand that really shoots the ball is the right hand. The only thing the left hand does is rest on the ball and keep it from falling out of your right hand. If you imagine some of the liftoffs in spaceships, the spaceship comes up and that carriage falls off. You shoot the ball one-handed eventually. You don't shoot it with two hands. That left hand comes off the ball. It's just there to keep the ball from coming out of your hand. It doesn't do anything. So as I turn here just a little bit, I've seen good shooters be here. I've seen good shooters be there. It doesn't really matter a great deal. I mean, we'd like it here on the side, but I've seen some of those old balls with the handprint on the side. Most of those are really bad. A lot of people talk about putting T, your two thumbs making a T. That's not a bad thing to think about. But again, the main thing is that left hand's going to come off. So where it's at doesn't matter a great deal. What does matter is it doesn't help you shoot the ball. Only your dominant hand's going to shoot the ball. This is the fourth segment. Introduction, right hand on the ball, left hand, what's it do? Now we're going to talk a little bit about footwork. Again, we're kind of talking about stationary shooting right now and shooting a free throw, for example. How do my feet look? As my cameraman points down there, again, my feet should be a little bit wider than shoulder length. I don't want them too narrow. There's not much balance there. I don't want them too wide. I want them just a little bit wider than shoulder length. Are my feet the same? No. I got one foot slightly ahead of the other one. So in my case, I got my right foot just a little bit ahead of my left foot. All right, Terry's going to back up and just kind of get the whole thing here. Again, valve stem, index finger, pull it back into the seam. Index finger is perpendicular to the seam, makes a right angle. Ball goes in the load position. My right index finger is going right to my right eye. It's not in front of my nose. It's not way above my head. It's not way out here to the side. It's going to go right through my right eye. My left hand is there only to hold the ball so it doesn't fall out of my hand. And if I do this correctly, I have a small bend with my knees, follow through, my left hand would come off. All right, so we're going to get a shot up here. I don't care if it goes in or not. Just want to go on my form. Index finger, valve stem, seam, straight, load, index finger going right through my right eye, left hand just there to keep things from falling out. Feet slightly wider than shoulder width, right foot a little bit ahead of my left foot, and here comes a shot. Down a little bit, follow through. Welcome back to today's final segment. Just want to kind of summarize a little bit. We've talked about right hand placement on the ball. We talked about what the left hand does. We talked about your foot, or your feet, excuse me, and how that looks. We talked about load position. Now, I want to just kind of give you something to think about as you're doing your shooting. What you don't want to do is go out in your driveway and just start throwing up three-pointers. We like to start every day at practice with form shooting. We get 5-6 feet away from the rim, and we just practice our form, valve stem, seam, straight, load, right eye, keeps my elbow straight, left hand, keeps the right hand from losing the basketball, feet slightly wider than shoulder width, right just a little bit ahead of the left, back to load position, we shoot, left hand comes off, we follow through. I would suggest shooting 5-10 shots from 5 or 6 feet, moving back, doing the same thing from 8 or 9 feet. Just keep working your way back. Work on your technique. Again, with enough strength, you can stand out here 10 feet and practice stationary shooting. And everything we've talked about today is kind of geared towards a free throw. Later, we'll talk about moving around the floor and proper footwork, but for today, your goal is to get out there in your driveway, on your garage, wherever you're at, Just work on technique. Index finger valve stem, seam, straight, load, elbow, tricep, right index finger, right eye, left hand only there to support the right hand, feet slightly wider than shoulder width, right foot a little ahead of the left foot. Now you're shooting a free throw, right hand goes up, left hand comes off, follow through, put your hand right inside the rim, and just work on form shooting. You can do that every day before you start whatever shooting workout you want to do. As your technique gets better, you can extend your range on your form shooting. Again, today everything is stationary. We can talk later about shooting off the move, inside, outside kind of footwork, but today it's just on shooting form, stationary shots, and how you should start every shooting workout. Thanks a lot.
So that's what we're striving for with our shot form. Like Coach Holt mentioned, it's really important to get this ironed out before we start taking a lot of shots. If we take a ton of shots with poor form, it's only going to hurt us down the road, especially as we begin to develop into junior high players and high school players. It's important to have good form. As we begin to grow and get stronger, we're going to be able to continue to shoot from farther and farther away, but we're always going to do it with good form. If you have good form, those shots are going to drop, especially if you put in the number of repetitions to really get yourself comfortable shooting the ball. So a huge thank you to Coach Holt for putting these videos together and for allowing us to get an insight to what he believes really helps make a good shooter. So thanks again, Coach Holt. Now jump over to video 2 from this week with Coach Evan Rogers to take a look at some of the things that we can be doing at our spaces at home on our own goals and area to become better shooters.